Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, I'm going to be joined by one of my coworkers here at RealTime Fantasy Sports, Dane Galloway. Dane and I are going to give you a playoff preview for the playoffs coming up this weekend. We thought it'd be a good time to go over the games, talk about some players we like from a fantasy perspective as well, also give you our picks for those games and for advancement into the Super Bowl. Thought it'd be a lot of fun to do this, give you guys a preview. There's a lot of great fantasy games that we offer on our site for the playoffs. So if your fantasy season's obviously over with, if you want to keep playing fantasy football, you can do it here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. We have some great contests, all different formats. We have a playoff challenge, which is where you pick any players you want before the start of the playoffs. Different price points for those, anywhere from $20 to $100 for the playoff challenge. Again, you pick any players you want. You have to stick with those players for the entire postseason, though, so obviously a lot of strategy involved there. We do overtime drafts, too. Again, different price points, $20 to $500 for overtime. That's where you actually have a live draft where you can pick players just like a regular fantasy draft you do before the season. Again, you're stuck with those players for the entire postseason, though. Also, we have our big fantasy championship postseason shootout, $50,000 grand prize. This is an awesome contest. You put any players you want on your roster, but at the limit of 2 per NFL team. So there's definitely some strategy to this contest for a chance to win $50,000. It's $125 to get in, or 3 entries for $350. There's a great leaderboard for this contest that you can keep an eye on as it goes on. It moves in real time. Just a lot of fun. Again, it's the postseason shootout. Go to rtsports.com. Click on the Money League link at the top of the page. You can see all these contests. This postseason shootout sells out every season, so I would get in it sooner than later if you want to participate. You don't have to pick your roster right now. Just have to do it before the games start this weekend. But if you want to get in, I would sign up sooner than later. Again, go to rtsports.com and then click on the Money League link at the top of the page, and you can see all the different postseason contests we have to offer. All right, let's get to this interview now with Dane Galloway of RealTime Fantasy Sports. We're going to give you a playoff preview for the 2022 NFL playoffs. I'm joined now by my coworker here at RealTime Fantasy Sports, Dane Galloway. Dane, thanks so much for joining me on the RealTime Fantasy Sports show today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk some playoff football.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I mentioned all of our playoff contests we have here on our site and the opening here, but I wanted to talk about strategy a little bit. How do you approach these contests? Are there certain things that you do, to help you prepare for them? Anything of that nature that we can give our viewers some tips about for these playoff contests?
So to start, I think understanding the format and the type of contest you're in is going to be key. So with something like the postseason shootout, where you have one team throughout the entire playoffs, I think making your Super Bowl picks and stacking that game to the best of your ability within team limits, player limits, that's going to be the key to maximizing the amount of scoring you can have throughout the playoffs. So if you've got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, you think the Chiefs are going to make the Super Bowl, then your NFC players should stack up to maximize the amount of points you can get that final round.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I like to map it out with these contests. So I'm more of a championship game guy. So if they make it to the championship, I think you're in good shape. The NFC and AFC championship. So that's a pool of 4 teams, and I like to pick from those 4 teams in these contests, especially if I'm doing a draft. I did one last night for the Colton and the Wolfman show, and I tried to stack players from Cincinnati, who's one team I like a lot in this playoffs because I like their draft path to their path to the championship game and Super Bowl. I kind of think they're set up for good things. So that's one team I liked. Arizona, Green Bay as well. So that's kind of how I approached it. Look at 4 teams that I think are going to advance to the championship, and then pick a lot of players from those teams. But like you said, I think you have to figure out who you think is going to win it all, and go for a lot of players from those teams on your playoff rosters. Definitely a way to do it. So let's talk about these games now, Dane. The first one on the slate for this weekend is Las Vegas at Cincinnati. Las Vegas snuck into the playoffs, got that crazy overtime win against the Los Angeles Chargers, but they're in the playoffs. They're big underdogs in this one. I'm going to use the Vegas Insider for my lines here, but Cincinnati's 5.5 point favorite, 49 for the over under. So kind of, run of the mill for over under here, maybe a little bit high scoring. But how do you see this game playing out? Maybe some fantasy players you like as well.
So I am a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I will put that out there to start. I will be in Cincinnati in person for this game in the stadium.
Wow.
And one thing I know about this game is it's going to be cold. As of the last time I checked, I've seen a high of 29, winds up to 10 miles an hour with possible wintry mix in the forecast. So I'm leaning towards this being more of a low scoring fantasy affair. I think we'll see what we saw in the week 11 matchup between these two teams, where Joe Mixon picked up 30 touches, over 100 yards, multiple scores. The Bengals really leaned on Mixon at that time when teams were focusing more on Jamar Chase, trying to slow him down. They're a different team than they were week 11, but I think that they still have the advantage over the Raiders. I like the 5.5 point spread there. I think that the Bengals win this one outright. And I think due to the weather, we'll see a lot more Joe Mixon than we have the previous two Joe Burrow starts where he threw for nearly 1,000 yards.
I like that call. I like Cincinnati in this game. I just can't figure out this Vegas team. I'm shocked that they made it to the playoffs. I should say, not the Super Bowl, because I don't think they're going to get out of this game. I like Cincinnati to cover. I'm not sure that score, that over under. I don't know if it's going to be the over there. I might like the under as well. I agree. I don't know if Vegas has enough firepower. The Cincinnati defense is playing a lot better lately. So I do like Cincinnati. I think they'll cover. I think it'll be the under. A couple players I like too. CJ Uzomah is kind of a guy I think could be a sneaky playing DFS. He's been really consistent this year. He's had a few big games as well, but he has at least three receptions, 6 straight games. If you take away last week, which was a game he was active, but he didn't really play, so I'm not counting that one. And Vegas allows the 5th most fantasy points to tight end. So maybe this is a game where Cincinnati's not really pushing the ball down the field, like you said, because of weather conditions. Uzomah could get some red zone targets. And with the Raiders, I like Josh Jacobs a lot in this matchup. I do think they'll lose. I think he's going to get a ton of touches, though. 100-yard games, 2 of 3. He has touchdowns 2 straight as well. Cincinnati allows the 11th most fantasy points to running back. So I like Jacobs in defeat. All right, let's talk about this next game on the slate. Should be a good one in my view. New England, Buffalo, 44 for the over-under. Buffalo's a 4-point favorite right now. I think this is going to be a close game. How do you see it playing out, Dane?
So I think it'll definitely be a close game. This is going to be the coldest game of the weekend, with I've seen wind chills taking this one below 0. However, not as much precipitation in the forecast as we saw in one of the previous Bills and Patriots matchups, where the Patriots threw a grand total of 3 passes, leaned on their running game, and snuck out a win. So I think that this is going to be another low-scoring game. I don't love Bills players for the first round. I love them throughout the playoffs in more favorable weather matchups. As lower seed, they'll be playing some road games if they make it later in the playoffs. But as for the first round, I think it's going to be another ugly game. I do like the Bills to win this one, but it's always tough to bet against Bill Belichick.
Yeah, I agree. And I see a lot of people on the Bills bandwagon to go to the Super Bowl. This first game scares me. I think it's going to be tough for them to get out of that. I do think they'll win. I'm not sure they cover. I could see a 3-point game in this one. I like the under 2. I like both running games a lot this week. I know Buffalo has been historically a pass-first offense. They're getting Devin Singletary a lot more involved, though. Touchdowns 4 straight. He had a touchdown his last time out against New England as well. He has at least 14 fantasy points, 5 straight games. So I like him to have another good showing. I love Damian Harris too. Touchdowns, 5 straight games for Harris now, 100-yard games each of his 2 games against the Bills this season. He has 17 plus fantasy points, 4 straight games as well. So I like both running games. I like the under. It still scares me. I'm picking the Bills, but I'm not completely confident in this one. I think it should be a really good game. All right, Philadelphia at Tampa Bay. You talked about weather a little bit, Dane. This one looks like it's going to be a lot of rain. It's going to be warm, but a lot of rain, which is a concern. So I think that over-under line could move a little bit because offenses might struggle a little bit. It's 47 right now, and Tampa Bay's a big 8.5-point favorite. What do you see happening in this one?
So last year, Leonard Fournette was the story of the playoffs. stepped up for the Buccaneers on their way to a championship win. I don't see Ronald Jones filling that role completely. We saw throughout the regular season, Fournette took over the starting role over Ronald Jones. Fournette had a fantastic season before an unfortunate hamstring injury. Jones, the past couple of weeks, hasn't exactly lit the world on fire. So I think we will see the classic Tom Brady to Rob Gronkowski connection shine against the Eagles defense. I think they'll be leaning on the short game, lack of Chris Godwin, lack of Antonio Brown after his antics. They're missing some deep threats. Cyril Grayson has stepped up into a prominent role. He's been an interesting late season bloomer, but I think Tom Brady or Rob Gronkowski will be main connection here. I like both of them for all playoff contests right now.
I totally agree with you. Rob Gronkowski's my guy in this game. I think Tampa Bay is going to cover. I think it could be the under, though. I'm worried about the Eagles putting up a ton of points. I could see Buccaneers scoring a lot, but this rain kind of concerns me now. I'm not sure about how these conditions are going to affect the outcome of this game. But like you said, I love Gronk. 2 straight 100-yard games. He's really leaning on him, Tom Brady. Wide receiver still hurting. No Godwin. Antonio Brown went off the deep end. He's not there anymore either. But Gronk's the guy right now. He has double-digit targets, 3-4 games as well. And if you didn't know, Philadelphia allows the most fantasy points to tight end. So another great indication Gronk's going to have a big game. And I like Jalen Hurts in defeating this matchup, despite how I said I'm not sure the Eagles are going to score a ton of points. I still think Hurts could do really well in this one. So if you're looking for maybe a DFS play or a bench spot for one of your leagues that you're going to play in, maybe you want to use Hurts this first week. If you're going a different route at quarterback, maybe you took Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Tannehill. But Hurts, 9th overall in fantasy scoring this year, despite 2 missed games. He has 4 games with 30-plus fantasy points. Like I said, I think Eagles are going to be playing from behind. Buccaneers have allowed the 9th most fantasy points to quarterback, so I think Hurts could do well in this matchup. Here's another good game for me, Dane. One I'm really excited to see. San Francisco, Dallas. I think this is going to be a great game. San Francisco is really a team that when they're firing on all cylinders, they're really good. And I think you see that with this line. It's 3 right now. Dallas is a 3-point favorite at home. They're expecting a lot of points. So 51 is the over-under. That's the highest of all the 6 playoff games. Dane, what's your views on this game? Dallas, San Francisco.
This game here is my upset pick of the wild card round. I think that the 49ers have enough firepower to pull off a win in Dallas. George Kittle is going to be a key here. Just an elite tight end, elite athleticism. And Dallas does have Micah Parsons, revelation rookie on defense, but there's no single man that can cover George Kittle man-to-man. His size, his athleticism, he is a game breaker. Jimmy Garoppolo, not my favorite quarterback. I don't think he's very good. I'm excited to see Trey Lance in his second year next year, but this year for the playoffs, it's going to be all Jimmy Garoppolo, all George Kittle. You'll see a lot of the classic 49ers running game that Kyle Shanahan loves running. But I think Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, all great options for playoff contests.
So we're on the same page here, Dane. Like you, I'm predicting upset here. I like San Francisco on the road. Like I kind of mentioned when I mentioned this game, when I talked about the preview of this game before I threw it to you, I think San Francisco, when they're firing on all cylinders, they're as good as any team in the league. That defense is good. Offense is just hard to game plan against, in my opinion, because they have so many weapons. Shanahan does a great job of getting that running game going. I love Deebo Samuel in this matchup. He just gets so many touches. He has at least 17 fantasy points, 4 straight games. He threw a touchdown pass last week. He gets running carries as well as passes in the passing game, touches in the passing game. So they use him all over the field. I love him. I think he's going to have a huge game, get a lot of touches. And I think the 49ers win on the road in this upset. And with Dallas, I kind of like Cedric Wilson as a DFS play. He had his second 100-yard game of the season last week, 11 receptions his last 2 games. With Michael Gallup hurt, San Francisco allows 11th most fantasy points to receivers. I think the 49ers will focus on shutting down CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. Wilson could get a lot of those targets this week, and Dak Prescott likes to look his way. But like you, Dane, I think San Francisco is going to win this one on the road. I have one more upset, too, and it's not this next game, though. Next one is Pittsburgh 9-7-1, another team that snuck into the playoffs against Kansas City 12-5. I think this could could be a bit of a snoozer. Biggest line of the week. Kansas City's a 12.5 point favorite at home. Over-unders 46.5 right now. Dane, what's your thoughts on this Steelers-Chiefs matchup?
Yeah, this is not going to be another upset. I'll put that one in writing right now. Ben Roethlisberger has not looked great closing out his career. I think he's ready to take a walk on the beach after this. It's going to be a long weekend against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have allowed the most yards per carry to opposing teams this year. Najee Harris, not your typical ground and pound running back, but I think he could be real busy week one against the Chiefs in the running game and in the passing game as the Steelers are playing from behind in the second half. Roethlisberger could see a lot of checks down to Harris. So I like Najee Harris as a week one running back, playoff week one. I don't think he's the best option moving forward in the playoffs. If you're in the postseason shootout, I wouldn't be counting on Najee Harris to make it all 4 rounds. But week one against the Chiefs, I think he has some upside.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategy because, like you said, if you could post a huge game, get a huge game, even in defeat, that can set you up good for the rest of the playoffs. So I kind of like that call on Najee Harris. I do like Kansas City. I like them to cover. I think they're going to score a lot of points in this matchup. And I like whoever is at running back for Kansas City, still kind of up in the air. Clyde Edwards-Helaire trying to return from that shoulder. Darrell Williams got banged up last week as well. But I think who's ever in there, they're going to get up big, have to run the ball a lot to kill the clock late in the game, in my opinion. So I like the running backs. Just keep an eye on those player reports and our notes. Keep an eye on that Twitter feed as well, because there's a lot of updates going on there. But I like the Chiefs running game. Pittsburgh's dead last against the run. They allow 146.1 rushing yards per game. And with Pittsburgh, I think they're going to have to throw a lot because they're going to be playing from behind. I know Big Ben's a huge risk. Check down Big Ben, as you mentioned, with Najee Harris getting a lot of touches in that passing game. But I think he could end up having a decent fantasy game. He's attempted 40-plus passes 5 of 8 games. So he's getting a lot of chances to air it out. They don't go very far, but there's a lot of good receivers on that Pittsburgh team that can break some big plays. So I wouldn't be surprised if Big Ben has a decent showing in defeat. I think they'll lose, and I think they'll lose big, but I still am not convinced Big Ben won't do some good things for fantasy owners that want to take a chance on him this last week, likely last week of his career. Last game of the playoffs, Arizona 11-6, Los Angeles Rams 12-5. This is another great game in my view. In my opinion, the San Francisco, Dallas, Arizona Rams games will be the best. Well, Buffalo, New England too. So those 3 games, I really like them. I think they're going to be great, highly entertaining. Arizona is a 4-point underdog. Rams favored by 4 at home, 49.5 for the over-under. I think that might be a little low for this game. Both these teams during the regular season won on the road in their games. They're in the same division. Arizona went to LA and won. Rams went to Arizona and won. So should be an interesting game. How do you like it playing out there, Dane?
I like the Rams outright here. Arizona's been juggling injuries all year. Obviously, the key loss of DeAndre Hopkins for the offense. J.J. Watt has been missing time on defense. So we've seen Arizona struggle in the second half of the season. So I like the Rams outright here. Saying Cooper Kupp is my favorite play is a bit of a cop-out. So I think we should look to the Rams running game. Obviously, there's the potential return of Cam Akers, missed the entire season after tearing his Achilles prior to training camp. Still up in the air there. So if they're splitting touches, Sony Michel and Cam Akers, I think it's more of a stay away spot. But if we see just Sony Michel this weekend, Cam Akers takes another week off, I like Sony Michel against a struggling Cardinals run defense.
So this is a tough call for me. I actually am going with another upset. I like Arizona here. I think it might be the over for that score, but I like Arizona to win on the road, like San Francisco as well. Arizona they were the best team in football the first half of the season, arguably. Really had a great start and then kind of faded down the stretch. Kyler Murray kind of lost his way. You mentioned all the injuries. DeAndre Hopkins, obviously a huge loss as well, but they got it going a little bit these last couple weeks. And the Rams, what worries me is Matthew Stafford. He's just made some awful decisions these last few weeks of the season. They lost a really bad game late in the year. I know Arizona did too. But with that said, I still like Arizona to win on the road. I think it'll be a close game. I think Arizona ekes it out in a high-scoring affair. I like Christian Kirk a lot in this matchup. I like both running backs too, James Conner and Chase Edmonds if they play, but if Edmonds plays, I should say. But I like Kirk to do well. He's been the top receiver with Hopkins out. At least 11 fantasy points, 4 or 5 games. He had 86 yards against the Rams in Week 14. You do have to look if Jalen Ramsey is shadowing Kirk, but I'm not sure he does out of the slot. Kirk likes to play out of the slot, so I think Kirk's going to have a good showing in this matchup. With the Rams, I kind of like Tyler Higbee coming on lately. He has at least 5 receptions, 4 straight games, 4 catches against the Cardinals in Week 4. So that's my other upset. I like Arizona in this matchup. I think it'll be a great game, though. Should be a lot of fun. A lot of good games this weekend, though, Dane. We talked about all the games. Now let's talk about overall. Are there any teams that I think it's as tough as any season, in my opinion, to predict the Super Bowl, especially with an extra team in the playoffs. But are there any teams that you feel pretty good about advancing a long way in these playoffs?
I think the Packers are as sure as a bet as any team to make the playoffs or to make the Super Bowl. They get the first round bye. Aaron Rodgers is still doing his thing. He could potentially win the MVP this year. They've looked fantastic. Top record in the league. So I like the Packers on the NFC side to make the Super Bowl. As far as the AFC goes, I'd love to talk about my Bengals as a sleeper candidate to win the Super Bowl, but I think there's too many holes for them. They've got a weak offensive line. Defense has played above expectations this year. Solid unit, nothing exceptional. So we get that. But yeah, Bengals have some holes on the offensive line. Defense has played above expectations this year. Nothing exceptional. So out of the AFC, I think the Chiefs are still the best bet to win outright. Tennessee, they could potentially get Derrick Henry back. We could see the early season Titans we saw just beating every team down in the run game. But I think we get a Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl, and I think the Packers come out on top.
I'm kind of like you in the NFC. I feel pretty confident about the Packers. Again, anything can happen in these playoffs. I like the 49ers to make a run too. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave the Packers a run for their money, but I do like the Packers at home, cold weather conditions. That defense has played much better as well the second half of the season. So I do like the Packers coming out of the NFC. Wouldn't be surprised if they play San Francisco. That's kind of how I have it mapped out in the NFC Championship. And in the AFC, the Chiefs too are hard to bet against. I think they have a fairly easy path to the AFC Championship. So I like them to reach that. I like Cincinnati to go to the AFC Championship as well. I think that'll make you happy, Dane. But I know you said they have some holes. I agree, but Burrow's playing so well. Jamar Chase, that offense is just so explosive. I think it'll keep them in games. And I'm going with the Cincinnati, Kansas City AFC Championship. And I'm going to say the upset. Cincinnati's going to make the Super Bowl, play against Green Bay. Green Bay's going to lose. Green Bay's going to win. I'm sorry, beat Cincinnati. But that's my pick. Green Bay, Cincinnati in the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers wins it all, and who knows what he does after that, because I don't think anybody does. I don't think Aaron Rodgers does, to be honest with you. But I'm excited about the playoffs. I don't know about you. It should be some great games coming up.
Very excited. Bengals haven't won a playoff game in my lifetime. So I'm ready. I'm ready to go to Cincinnati this weekend. I'll layer up. I'm excited for some awesome playoff football.
Yeah, and I'll mention, since we're in St. Louis here, the Monday night game is 2 teams that were in St. Louis at one time, Cardinals, Rams playing against each other. St. Louis Bowl is kind of depressing. Kind of depressing for us here in St. Louis to see those teams doing so well, not with us anymore. But oh well, it happens. All right, Dane, that was a lot of fun. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. Maybe we'll do it for next week as well. Talk about those games, give our viewers some options to use for their fantasy teams and for DFS as well. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. It's been a lot of fun.
And that was my interview with Dane Galloway of RealTime Fantasy Sports. I want to thank Dane for joining me on this show today. We had a great time going over all the games for this weekend, talking about the fantasy players we like as well, who we think is going to win, who we think is going to advance to the Super Bowl. A lot of fun. Thanks again to Dane for joining me. We're going to have to do this again with him going forward. It was a great show, and I hope you really enjoyed it. And I hope you get in one of these fantasy playoff contests on our site. Go to rtsports.com, click on the Money League link at the top of the page. You can see all the different contests we have to offer. It's a lot of fun to play fantasy football during the postseason, and I highly suggest getting in one. This has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.